Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone to ICNA ILF weekly Quran study session. We are resuming our sessions after Ramadan. Today's guest speaker is Brother Khalid Griggs. He will be explaining, inshallah, ayat 21 to 30 of Surah Al Imran. Inshallah, his the duration will be around 20 to 25 minutes, followed by a quick Q&A session. Brother Khalid, please enlighten our hearts.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الذين يكفرون بآيات الله ويقتلون النبيين بغير حق ويقتلون الذين يأمرون بالقسط من الناس فبشرهم بعذاب أليم أولئك الذين حبطت أعمالهم في الدنيا والآخرة وما لهم من ناصرين ألم تر إلى الذين أوتوا نصيبا من الكتاب يدعون إلى كتاب الله ليحكم بينهم ثم يتولى فريق منهم وهم معرضون ذلك بأنهم قالوا لن تمسنا النار إلا أياما معدودات وغرهم في دينهم ما كانوا يفترون فكيف إذا جمعناهم ليوم لا ريب فيه ووفيت كل نفس ما كسبت وهم لا يظلمون قل اللهم مالك الملك تؤتي الملك من تشاء وتنزع الملك ممن تشاء وتعز من تشاء وتذل من تشاء بيدك الخير إنك على كل شيء قدير تولج الليل في النهار وتولج النهار في الليل وتخرج الحي من الميت وتخرج الميت من الحي وترزق من تشاء بغير حساب لا يتخذ المؤمنون الكافرين أولياء من دون المؤمنين ومن يفعل ذلك فليس من الله في شيء إلا أن تتقوا منهم تقاه ويحذركم الله نفسه وإلى الله المصير قل إن تخفوا ما في صدوركم أو تبدوه يعلمه الله ويعلم ما في السماوات وما في الأرض والله على كل شيء قدير يوم تجد كل نفس ما عملت من خير محضرا وما عملت من سوء تود لو أن بينها وبينه أمدا بعيدا ويحذركم الله نفسه والله رؤوف بالعباد
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Before getting into a commentary, a tafsir of ayahs 21 through 30 of Surah Ali Imran, I want to quickly apologize to those in the audience for the froggy, the sound of my voice. Just today, my voice got into this condition, so I'm trying to limit my speech. I hope that you'll be able to follow the ayahs that were read in Arabic, and I'll just do brief commentaries on these ayahs. The first ayah, ayah 21 of Ali Imran, is addressed to the Jews. And the previous ayahs in the surah were addressing either the mushriks and the Christians. But beginning at this particular ayah, that ayah 21 is now addressing the Jews. And it's read in translation that surely those who disbelieve the verses of Allah and slay the prophets unjustly, and from people slay those who did justice, to them give glad tidings of a painful punishment. There is a hadith, and it's related by Ibn Abi Hatim. And this narration, attributed to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, has said that the Bani Israel had slain 43 prophets at the same time, one of all 43 at the same on the same incident at one time, and that there were 177 righteous, pious, believing Jews who all stood up at the same time and exhorted those who had killed these prophets to uphold justice, to follow your book, do what you're commanded to do. And according to this narration, those who had killed the 43 prophets then had the 177 pious elders also killed. So the behavior of these impious Jews, who went as far as killing so many, even if it's just one, but killing so many of the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then killing those who were just calling upon them to be just and to act according to their guidance, that along with that comes a certain mentality. And this is a mentality that other following ayahs will discuss, the mentality that could cause a people to do such a thing. In this next ayah, that those are the ones whose deeds have gone waste in this world and in the hereafter. And for them, there are no helpers. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it very clear that to those who are so brazen, so bold, so flagrant in their actions, so disregarding the scriptures that they had with them, that they are the ones who, no matter what they do, their good deeds are wasted because of their actions. And so the good goes to waste in this world and in the next. That even when they try to accomplish something good, that their bad deeds will cause those who see what they're doing to turn away from them. So their good deeds would not be of benefit for them in this world or in the next world. As we move on, excuse me, to ayah 23. This is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins to directly address the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addressed the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam by reminding him, Bismillah ar-Rahim, did you not see those who have been given a share from the book? They are invited to the book of Allah in order that it may decide between them. Then a group from them goes back, turning their faces away. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referencing the Torah that was given to the prophets. But just like their other deeds, these group of people, that they're having the Torah will be of no benefit. And after they invited to what has been revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu the Qur'an, in order that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can decide between them, that many of them, a group of them, will only turn their faces away, that they don't want to even hear about what's in the Quran, that their hearts are so polluted that they cannot derive benefit from even hearing the message of submission that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This next ayah goes on that it is because they have said the fire should not touch us for a few days, and deceive that they are in faith by what they have been forging. That this begins to speak to the mentality of a people who could kill individuals who had been raised for their guidance, that they knew that they were prophets, but in their rejection of the message of these prophets, that they killed them and killed those who were calling them to justice. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps us to understand this mentality, that they are so arrogant that they think they can do anything, because they say, well, the fire is we're only going to be, if we go to be punished in the fire, it would only touch us for just a few days, that we won't be in the fire of so many days. It's like the mentality of those Jews who were with the Prophet Musa alayhi salam when he went away to receive the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And while he was gone for 40 days, that they crafted a golden calf and began to bow down and to worship this calf. And they did this in 40 days of the absence of the Prophet Musa alayhi salam. And even their mentality was that because of what we have done, we will only be punished by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Allah, in the fire, only for 40 days. So it was a mentality of those who had corrupted the revelation that they had in the form of the Torah. It was their mentality that we can do anything, and Allah, we are his chosen people, and that we will only be punished for a limited number of days. You know, brothers and sisters, when we think about this mentality, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is attributing this mentality to this particular group of people, we can only look at what is going on in Palestine and Philistine today. We can look at the slaughter of innocent men, women, and children. We can look at the deliberate destruction of housing and infrastructure and everything that is needed to sustain healthy living. And when we look at this siege that the people of Gaza have been under for now 2 weeks, it has to reflect a mentality of people who think that if I am punished for what I'm doing, if they have any belief at all, then I will only be punished for a few days, that this is not a punishment that I would have to endure forever. And so even though these ayahs are making specific reference, we can also see that when we look in contemporary times and even look at what's going on in Gaza today, we can see that this genocidal assault on relatively helpless people in Gaza under the occupation of the Israeli government, that when we look at their condition and we look at how they're being slaughtered, that their attitude is reflective of those who had the attitude that let me do whatever I want to do because I'm only going, if I go to hell, if I am to be punished, it would only be for a limited number of days. Brothers and sisters, when we look at this next ayah, uh, and deceived they are in the faith by what they have been forging, then how will it be when we gather them on a day in which there is no doubt, and everybody will be paid in full for what he has earned, and they should not be wrong. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is extending, he's given us his guidance in informing us that what they have done when they are gathered, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not wrong them or anyone in the least, that no matter how horrendous, how horrible their actions may be, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-adl, he is the just, and that they will not be wronged, even though they have committed some of the greatest acts of disobedience and shirk against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these ayahs address the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and lets him know that the believers should look forward to the day and look forward to the time when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will settle all disputes, will make clear that his guidance was the truth. His guidance is the truth, and that those who take light the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will pay the cost and pay the price in the hereafter. Brothers and sisters, ayah number 26, when we look at this particular ayah and when we look at the prophetic traditions, the narrations attributed to the Prophet Muhammad SAW with this ayah, we find that the ayah was revealed in relation to the saying of the Prophet Muhammad SAW that the promise of Allah, Prophet Muhammad SAW, that the Byzantine and the Persians will be, and in reference as well, the people of Yemen, that they will be overtaken, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward the believers with having complete authority over the Byzantine Empire, this eastern part wing of the Roman Empire, the mighty Persian Empire, and the Yemeni Empire to the south of where the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba were living. When the hypocrites heard the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ relating this revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about the Muslims to be patient because the Muslims will be able, will overcome the Persian, the Byzantine, and the Yemenis. The hypocrites began to laugh and they said, well, look at this person. How is it that in the condition that he and the Muslims find themselves in today, how can he expect us to believe that these weak, small group of people are going to overcome the mighty Byzantine and the mighty Persian empires? And so, in direct response to this ridicule that these Munafiqun uh, attempted to do with the Prophet Muhammad relating what he had just related, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, Bismillah ar-Rahim, say, O Allah, O Lord of the kingdom, you give kingdom to whom you will, and you take kingdom away from whom you will, and you bestow honor on whom you will, and you bring disgrace to whom you will. In your hand lies the good. You are surely powerful over everything. That the Mufassirin and in the prophetic literature, we find that this particular ayah was revealed in direct response to the hypocrites trying to ridicule and make light of the Prophet Muhammad guarantee from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that these empires would come under the complete authority of the Muslims. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is inspiring in the believers the firm belief, have full confidence and faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't get caught up in the conditions, the immediate conditions that we find ourselves and the believers in. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will and has the capacity to change the condition, as anything has been referenced earlier, where in Surah Baqarah, where the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it clear he can just say kun fayakun, be and it is, and any condition can change. And so we have to have a perfect, a pure faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that we won't get disheartened by the immediate state that we have as individuals, or the collective state of this ummah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And whatever, don't discount, don't make little, don't have doubt about any promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has power over everything, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed nothing but the truth to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the form of the Qur'an and in the form of the prophetic sunnah. This next ayah 27, you make, and this is a continuation, that you make, speaking of Allah, the night enter into the day, and you make the day enter into the night, and you bring the living out from the dead and the dead out from the living, and you give to whom what you will. That this particular ayah is reinforcing that Allah gives and takes from whomever he will, that the person who has the least of resources, the person that has the least of responsibility in society, that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills, then he can make that man, he can make that woman be a person of respect and honor. That whatever condition that we find ourselves and the ummah finds itself in at any time, that this is not a permanent condition if it's Allah's will, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can change that condition from what it is presently to a much better and more influential condition in the society. Brothers and sisters, after the defeat of the Mushriks in the battle of Badr, and basically a very near absolute defeat in the battle of Uhud. Those particular battles, those first two battles fought against the collective state of the Muslims or the Muslim order in Medina, caused the mushriks and the Christians and the few Yahud in Medina to become anxious, to become afraid about what will be their state. And so they came together in a force, a collective force, and made a decision that we will go to Medina and we will crush Muhammad and the Muslims once and for all. We will rid ourselves of what they considered a scourge upon their honor in Mecca, in their honor as members of the Quraysh, those who were members of the Quraysh. And so this decision was made to collectively gather and go to Medina. That it was not enough that the Prophet Muhammad and the majority of the Muslims had gathered in Medina away from Mecca. Now they were anxious, so they felt, let's go to Medina. Let's go there. Let's crush these Muslims once and for all. And we know from the Surah of the Prophet Muhammad and we know from the Hadith literature that Salman al-Farsi was accustomed, had experience in fighting in Persia. He was a Persian and he had experience in fighting in Persia, and he shared with the Prophet Muhammad after the Prophet Muhammad received intelligence that all of these forces were gathering against him and the Muslims in Mecca, that Salman al-Farsi informed the Prophet of a method of warfare that they used in Persia, where they would dig these deep ditches, and they would dig them wide enough and deep enough that there was little prospect that anyone would be able to cross that ditch without getting killed or be able to attack the Muslims on the other side of the ditch. And so this next ayah and lets us know, and the commentary lets us know, that the Prophet Muhammad instructed his Sahaba to let's dig the ditch. Those who are come outside of Medina to protect Medina, what we need to do first is dig this protective ditch. In the Hadith and in the Surah literature, we find that the Prophet Muhammad had instructed for 10 of the men to dig the length of 40 handspans and to dig down deeply, that the ditch itself encompassed miles, that it was very hard and tiresome work. Again, the hypocrites would attempt to ridicule the Muslims. How are you going to defend yourself? You're out here digging ditches. And so one of the experiences that came from this was the episode of the Prophet Muhammad being called to a section of a ditch where they were attempting to dig the ditch, where there was this huge rock and they couldn't seem to break this rock open. So Salman al-Farsi went to the Prophet and brought him back to where this rock was and then told him that, we can't break the rock. And the Prophet took the chisel or axe or, whatever was being used, and with one blow, he started busting up this rock that no one else could do anything with, that they couldn't bust this rock. And so the Prophet Muhammad, when he hit it the first time and it shattered into so many pieces, a streak of light came from this rock which illuminated a very wide area. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ then told the Sahaba, in this light, I see the palaces and the buildings of Hira in Persia. He struck it again. More light came out, and the Prophet ﷺ said that I have been shown the red palaces and buildings of the Byzantine. He struck it a third time, and a flame beamed out with light around it. And he said, in this I was shown the great palaces of Sana'a in Yemen. That this is more commentary to help us understand this experience of the battle of Ashab, how it's referred to in the Qur'an, and the history is referred to as the battle of Khandaq, the battle of the ditch. And we know that the Muslims, under the leadership of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, were able to successfully defend Medina by using and having this particular ditch. Now, getting to coming to a close in my commentary, and if there are any questions, I will attempt to answer these questions. That the last few verses, the 28th through 30 ayahs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it very clear of the limitations of the kinds of relationships that we would have with non-Muslims, with disbelieving people. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says very clearly for the believers not to take the disbelievers as friends instead of the believers. And whoever does that has no relation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whatsoever, unless you guard yourselves against an apprehension from him. And Allah warns you of himself, and to Allah is your return. Say, whether you conceal what is in your heart or you reveal it, Allah will know it, and he knows what is in the heavens and what is on the earth. And Allah is powerful over everything. On the day when everybody shall find, be brought before him, and whatever good he did and whatever evil he did, he will wish that there were a long distance between him and that day. And Allah warns you of himself, and Allah is compassionate to his servants. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given through these ayahs and in various places in the Quran the limitations that we have in our dealings and our friendships with those who are not believers or disbelievers or rejectors of the faith, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it clear for us not to take in friendship disbelievers rather than believers. And if we do, we could sever our relation, our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is to be understood not in the absolute sense of not having any kind of friendly relations with non-Muslims, but the relationship that of friendship that is absolutely forbidden, that the fuqaha have brought forward, is that kind of affectionate love, that intense emotional commitment, the mu'alat, this close friendship is restricted to the Muslims. But then there are other kinds of relationships that could be based on sympathy. It could be based on charitable support, giving condolences, that this is a form of friendship when we assist. One quick example, at the time of the famine in Mecca, those who had so abused the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, that during this particular famine, he went out and to see and determine, could he do anything to assist those who were having an even more difficult time than himself. So there are relationships that we can establish, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in His infinite wisdom, has made it clear that having the kind of loving relationship from the heart is restricted um, to the believers. And so I will stop at this particular point and see if there are any questions. And so, Brother Bilal, if you could help me out with that, please.
And Jazakallah, Brother Khalid. Uh, thank you very much for the powerful reminder. Let's see if we have any questions. There is one from Shahnaz Khan. Is there any information on Salams? Not sure what that means. Given to Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, no mention in Quran.
Okay, I don't know if I understand what that is.
Okay.
If the person could clarify a little more
Yeah.
information on the Psalms. Okay, give it to Prophet Dawood. And there is mention, and I stand to be corrected, that the Zabur is the book that was actually revealed to the Prophet Dawood that is mentioned in the Quran, the book that was revealed to him. The Psalms come from primarily a Christian reference, biblical reference, the Psalms of David. And these were very beautifully related. I mean, it's very inspirational reading. I'll put it like that. But this is the book, the entire book, the Zabur that was revealed to the prophet um, Dawood has been mentioned, but in the Christian and I think even in the Jewish tradition, it's just a mention of the Psalms of David.
All right. Thank you. If anyone else has any other questions, please type them in. I will maybe give it a few more seconds. So meanwhile, we wait for these questions, Brother Khalid. So the first ayah that you started the lesson, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَكْفُرُونَ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ. So this is about the Jews. Was there any particular behavior that led them, or was there any particular attitude or actions they were doing that the prophets were stopping them to do and they killed them, or was it in general that they were calling them to Allah and they just decided to kill them?
Allahu Alam, the hadith that ran across in relations to this event did not mention what the Prophet ﷺ were calling these folks to. But I could only imagine that just taken, given the response that the hadith mentions from the 177 elders, righteous people that stood up at the same time, calling them to act justly, to be just, that there was, in addition to, and this is just personal kind of deduction, that by their calling them to act justly and stand for justice, that there were other criminal acts that were being committed by them, going against the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that there were other criminal acts being performed by them. And these righteous elders were calling them to stop what they were doing, to practice justice.
All right, thank you very much. So if there are no more questions, then we conclude the session. Thank you very much for your time. بارك الله لكم في القرآن الحكيم ونفعنا وإياكم بالآيات والذكر الحكيم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.
Allah